Hello.
Hey,
I'm so happy to bring Claire Fulton from Edinburgh, Scotland, onto our podcast show today. And we are talking about the Wild Temple School, this sage apprenticeship, and a little bit about Claire's background and what has brought her to yoga and Ayurveda, and just being in an industry that is more tech and how this applies in her life. So, Claire, I'm really just thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And would love for you to introduce yourself. You can start there.
hi, Brooke. I'm delighted to be here. I'm an avid listener to your podcast and feel really special to be invited to be a guest. Who am I? I have been a yoga practitioner for many years. Um, I did yoga teacher training and was really an avid Ashtanga practitioner until recent years. I also have a full-time job in the IT world. So since lockdown, I find myself sitting at a desk a lot. So I'm really leaning on the yoga practices now to support that, both physically, mentally. Yeah, and yeah, it's lovely to be part of this.
Yeah, it's true. I think you said you shared with me a while ago, you were practicing Ashtanga for 16 years. You're
Yeah, I was
really
around about
dedicated.
16. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
dedicated. And obviously that took a bit of time to um, grow, but yeah, I was pretty much full on 5, 6 days a week for many years.
Mm,
So that had its trials.
yeah. Yeah. And then you have a lot also under your belt. So you've been trained in Kate Stillman's Body Thrive. So you understand the Ayurvedic habits. You've gone through Shakti school. So you are also very seasoned in feminine form Ayurveda. And yeah, and then you found your way here to the Wild Temple. So I'd love for you just to give us a window as to what brought you here.
It's a really good question. Um, I went through yoga teacher training. I think it was 2013 I qualified. It was a 200 hour, and I knew there was much more to it. It was a really nice. I just loved the training. I never really set out to be a yoga teacher, but I really loved the training. I was doing the Ashtanga practice, and felt that that satisfied the body's need to move. But I was looking at, for some time, had been looking for more, knew there was more to the yoga, and it was kind of like, it felt often like a secret. um, and different people had like different parts of the knowledge and the understanding, and I couldn't quite get there. I don't know why that was, but it was kind of failed. It's one of the things I love about you, because I feel that one of your jobs is to unveil, and that's certainly what you've been doing in my life, taking away some of that mystery. And then I did some work with Kate Stillman, and I found Kate through somebody else through the Ashtanga world. And then I did her Body Thrive program and started to teach that way before I felt ready to. But I started to practice the Ayurvedic dinacharya habits and started to share that with friends and family and different things. But I really felt like I wanted to, this is me always, I just want to know more, need more understanding. And yeah, I found Shakti School, and that was through somebody that was in Kate's programs. And so I signed up to do the first year of Shakti School, and that was started in January 2020. And then before we knew it, we were in the midst of this global pandemic, and I was like, thank God I know something. It's really nice to know kind of how to, settle the nervous system a little bit, through all this kind of scary news and whatnot. So I kind of finished the first year, and at that point you taught in the second year in Shakti school. I don't know if that's changed a little bit, but I decided to go on and do the second year. And by this time I was um, really considering leaving my job. I had worked with the same company in many different guises for more than 30 years. It seemed like a lifetime. Um, but I was ready to, I just didn't want to be there. The company was changing a lot. And then um, I did your class. And for some reason, and I hadn't really done this with any of the other teachers, so Shakti School brings together lots of different teachers, which is really lovely. I hadn't really done this with any of the other teachers, but somehow I got led to your website and I started to read a little bit about what you did. And for some reason, it just all clicked. I thought, this is what I need. Wasn't really looking for another yoga teacher training, but somehow I got into your 200 hours program. Um, and it was quite an interesting time for me because it was 2021, I think, moving into 2022, if that would be right. And actually, my whole life as I knew it was kind of crumbling away. I hadn't really planned to leave my job so much, but it's kind of happened to me. And then everything, I had quite a kind of debilitating injury or niggling injury through the yoga practice, and I couldn't shake it. It was a real deep kind of internal hip issue that just kept nagging. And so I stopped doing the practice. I just stopped. And then suddenly everything kind of shifted. All the things crumbled around me. Yeah, and obviously I wasn't leaving the house to go to work every day because I was now working at home and etc. etc. So yeah, I think it was a real point, a real turning point in my life. I think you have those points in life, certain points in your years where just everything shifts. And so meeting you, I felt like your programs and your teachings and your way of holding people, I just felt quite safe in what I was doing, even although everything was moving. So yeah, so that's my experience. And then I think I've probably done every one of your programs by now. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so now, which is why you are such a wonderful spokesperson and to offer a window into what it is that we do here. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that sticks out for what you just shared, Claire, was sometimes we don't quite understand why we are drawn to something. And yet you knew deep down, like you even expressed, there were deeper truths to be revealed through the yogic system, through the tantric system, even that were almost held in the vaults, right? So secret. And part of my dharma is to demystify things, to bring forward into the right hands and into the right hearts these really what I call them power tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that your draw into studying with me, even though you've already done a 200 hour, what I've experienced is many people do a couple 200 hours, right? Because you can't quite get all of it in the first 200 hour. But what makes my 200 hours so different than many schools that I know of is that it's held in Ayurveda. And I even call it the yoga of Ayurveda. So I really do attract people who have studied Ayurveda, but maybe have a harder time living it. And so when we are meeting once a week and we're really living these daily habits. So I too learned that Body Thrive course, and I think it's just so brilliant that I've barely changed a thing. So I bring that in with the blessings of Kate. I bring that into our program, but it's more than just Ayurvedic lifestyle and habits. It's understanding how when we're shaping the spine in certain ways, we're either activating the nervous system or calming the nervous system. And then we're preparing ourselves for really moving into the more subtler realms of mind and emotion. And so at a very deep level, it's yoga therapy. And we're moving into understanding not only the nature of the musculoskeletal system, but we're learning through our habits and through learning more about ourselves, how to tend to our minds, how to strengthen emotional intelligence, how to work with the subtle energies to imbue these energies, this life force into our yoga practices so that they reach this depth of intelligence. And it's not us doing this practice as like little mechanical puppets or, machines reduced to A plus B equals C, but there's this life force that's pulsing through us. And that intelligence is what taps us into spirit and is what moves us towards self-realization. So even at that 200-hour level, I've always known has been very advanced or deeper than most 200-hour levels because it's the yoga of Ayurveda. There's psychology to it, very basic, yoga psychology, but also just the biodynamics of sequencing, how to wisely sequence a practice so you're doing no harm. And yeah, and I think that
Mhm.
piece of it, I think, was what started to help you unwind. Like you were,
Yeah.
yes, things were crumbling all around you. Life was changing, things were different, but also with working with me and just starting to come back into this, like living your yoga, living in alignment with nature, Mother Nature, in the seasons, in the Ayurveda, all the things in an integrative, cohesive way. You were realizing the parts of yourself that were needing to be let go of, and other aspects that were hungry, that were actually malnourished. And would
Yeah.
you like to speak? I'm wondering if you're getting a clue as to what I'm talking about, but um,
Well, what was running through my head as you were saying all that was that I have kind of studied in the very masculine
yeah,
way, right?
that's
So
it.
I mean, my job is I work with mostly men. It's a very kind of corporate, cutthroat kind of world. And yes, there's not a lot of room for um, feminine kind of way. If I'm soft at all, I kind of have to put on a bit of an armor in the workplace. I can't show myself too much. So I'd learned that and not really known that that's what happened over the years. And then I practice probably the most masculine form yoga there is, Ashtanga. It's very structured, it's very disciplined, it's very like no room for kind of no room for deviation. And kind of there is, but not really. It's like this is the way.
Yeah.
And this idea of kind of just bust through whatever you're feeling. Don't feel your body too much because that'll just hinder your progress. So
Mm.
it's all very the life I was living was very structured, very kind of that masculine way of just push through, make progress, do more, do it harder. Before we had this chat today, I was reflecting on that period of my life a little bit. And I was thinking I was getting up at before 5 in the morning, running over town to the yoga studio, doing a 2 hour practice, running from there to work, doing the work, like getting home, like, and then I was running this Ayurvedic, body thrive type course with my people. So I was doing lots of prep for that. And then I was holding these once a week. I was just exhausted, but I didn't let myself feel anything. I didn't want to because somewhere in me, I knew that if I let myself know that that's what was going on, then, I just would not survive really. It was just be so
Yeah.
exhausted. And I think when I'm describing that time when I met you at first, that's really what was going on with me. I was feeling it all and feeling how exhausted I was, and everything was like, wow, this is a lot. It was really yeah, and I took a real tumble into the darkness,
Yeah.
which is and now I know that's the feminine.
Yeah.
Go deep into the darkness. Yeah, so it's interesting to kind of reflect a little bit on that time, because it's a little scary when things are breaking down. And I'm thinking all these things I knew, all the changes in me. I don't know really how to cope with this, but the structure of the 200-hour practice, that course that I was part of initially with you, it kind of helped me. And one of the main things you were teaching us was the sequence of things.
Mhm.
Like, okay, this sequence actually is really quite, the build up and then the breakdown. That's real. That's in nature. That's all around us. So it's okay if things are breaking because they've just been too out for too long. Let's
Yeah.
go in a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember it was so beautiful when you had the great ahas, and it was around um, recognizing that the style of yoga and your approach with this masculinity, right, was not conducive to your authentic nature or your dharma. And I
Yeah.
remember that it was also, we were doing ancestral healing. So you
Yes.
recognize that, you come from a long line of really strong women and what that, feminine power really means. And I think it was, all of these pieces, again, because we are very integrative. It's very holistic. So it's not super sharp and painful. I've
Yeah.
been told again and again, I have a very mothering energy, right? And then we're held in community. So it's like the first time, and I would say you're not alone. So many of my students experience this. The first time you feel like you can slow down and
Yeah.
really discover yourself and just allow yourself to be a mess. Like, I mean, I even say if you can just show up to class and you just lay there like a blob, and you're doing shavasana the whole time or restorative and you're just getting the information, like that is so fine, and people we all need that right amount of time for grace to, it's a divine timing thing, right? It takes us different levels of that unwinding. And so I know you did it for quite a long time. You were in, we would call it a chrysalis.
Yeah.
And how when you started to touch, it was like touching the sunlight of the other side. Would you express some of the things that you experienced when you realized what feeling this feminine power coming into your wholeness, and even this kind of shift from what could possibly considered a little of a toxic approach to yoga for your needs?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was coming up for me there was you are mothering, but one of your gifts, I think, is that you're naming it as we go. You're like this, the unveiling is you're actually pointing it out. You're using language that helps you know that that's what's going on, and
Mm.
it's not a problem. It's actually all part of what's happening in the, which could feel scary, but what your gift, I think, is to say it.
Like what? Can you give us an
Oh,
example?
I think even like even calling it a chrysalis,
Hmm.
so I was in this dark place, and I think that's quite a common sort of thing in the culture now, that people are, like in the chrysalis, in the dark space. But I don't know, the way that you expressed it with me was, I didn't feel scared about it. I
Hmm.
thought this is just part of the process. This is okay. The way you nurtured that in me. And I think, yeah, the toxic kind of yoga culture. I mean, I always remember doing the Ashtanga practice and lots of people talking about um how bad it is and how toxic it is. And at the time, it really served me. I needed it.
Yeah.
And I think the problem happened for me, and I actually loved it as well. It's very kind of gymnastic approach to yoga,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
really
And I do
loved,
want to say that when I use toxic, I was almost like, oh,
yeah,
I'm going to take it back, but misaligned, disharmonious.
yes,
Yeah. That's a better phrase.
Yeah, I think what I was saying before about Ashtanga is that there's no room for, I don't know, like you to, I think, to feel what is really going on. There's not, that's not the instruction. And I don't mean that there's anybody particularly at fault here necessarily. I don't blame anyone. What I
Yeah.
think is the way that I understood the messaging. And I'm learning from people that have learned this from people that, just that's what they know. Um, and so I don't really like to point fingers, you were wrong and you did this to me. That's not how it is. It's like my approach to it. I needed this. I loved it. I loved being part of a community that shows up at 5 in the morning to a yoga studio and it's this sort of secret place, and then you go off to your life. But I think what happened for me was there's no there's not the there's not a huge amount of support when you're not able to do that
Mm.
and to push through the pain and to to just I feel like I was overriding my sense of me a lot in all of that, and I think there's not a kind of good level of support. And I think you've helped and you've been part of that community as well at a point in your life. And I think to not have that this was bad kind of chat, Ashtanga's terrible or whatever. It's
Yeah.
not that. It's like at some point it was great for me, but when I was really ready to leave it before I actually left. And
Yeah.
that's really why I kind of injured myself. So
Yeah.
there was quite a bit of ego in that. I just wanted to keep
Yeah.
doing the upside down thing and the handstandy thing and all of that, right? So I did really want to do that, but it wasn't serving me. And I think pandemic and all of that really was a bit of a blessing for me, blessing and a curse, right? There's two sides to it, but um, it kind of removed me from it. It's almost like
Mm.
God sent in a way, how could I have extracted myself from that without it kind of thing. So yeah, so I think there's just a real lack of, you talk about how the yoga that you're offering is really well rounded. Well, there was really no talk about Ayurveda in that circle.
Yeah.
No difference in seasons, no difference in cycles of the month, even,
Yeah.
so like it's actually not great for women generally. Um, so yeah, it ended up a little bit like not great for me, but I think I learned so much about me and how, my proclivities to um, be productive and to progress is always my, so Ashtanga like just hit all that for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's such a, and I have to agree, I loved Ashtanga. That was my gateway. I was an Ashtangi for 7 years, and my teacher was like, go to India and then come and teach. And when I came back, I was like, ooh, I tried, and then I realized I would like to know a little more about how to teach. And so I went through a 200-hour, which was like a little sampler of all different kinds of yoga. And it's
yeah.
still, but what happened was me too, my body, like I love strength. I love feeling strong, and the physicality of Ashtanga does make you feel strong. The community makes you feel strong, and the not having to think about what comes next, knowing the primary series, knowing what you're doing, um, you're enabled to turn the mind off, and you can just go into a flow, which there's a brilliance there. I think that I know people in the UK and people in America, we need that support to turn the mind off. So that is all brilliant. And I really feel that my
Mm.
my experience mirrors yours, where due to living in a colder, wetter environment, when I was doing Ashtanga, waking up so early in India, the warm environment, your body is just open to it. I wound up having a child, so I had to go through postpartum. And Ashtanga doesn't really support that. And so you're just continuously efforting, and there isn't a restorative. There's no yin to balance it out, or there is no talk of releasing the mula bandha, releasing that root lock. There's no talk of, yes, aligning your yoga practices to the seasons where, maybe in the winter time, instead of, doing I don't know, you could do maybe a little more in a heated room in the wintertime, for example, and in the summertime, less heated room and maybe some more restorative so you don't overheat, right? So there's always a balance that when you keep the sister sciences together, and I'm such a firm believer that yoga needs to come from the soil, the foundation of our Ayurvedic wisdom, of our 5 element theory. And so those pieces, bringing those back together, when you came in with the knowledge of Ayurveda, with the knowledge of the Dinacharya, then it was like, you're right, you didn't want to let go of that Ashtanga. And I never pushed that. I wouldn't, I'm actually a big fan of, we can learn all of these practices and apply it to what we already love. Right. I call myself a Dharma igniter because I'm like, okay, what is your Dharma? Let's get you really strong and aligned with it so that you can be the most beautiful, badass self in your field that you want to be. And what started to happen was you really loved the mantras, you really loved the prayers, right? That was a big piece of in the first 200-hour taking with me, and learning the sequences and the energetic effects and the psychology behind it all. You were still like, yes, and I'm going to apply this to my Ashtanga. And I was like, yeah, do it. I'd love to see that, and then then you were learning more about your ancestors. And then this, you just started to come forward. And I think your own needs of slowing things down. And I remember we were in the winter time, and you were then going into this deep clean of your home, and into spring, this like deep cleaning, and like you slowed down too. And you were just like, oh, I need this deep clean. And you were astonished with how I was astonished with how astonished you were in showing up to class, like every time being like, I'm amazed that I just want to go slow. And I'm really feeling like it's okay and nourishing and tending to myself. Like, I don't
Yeah.
do that. I show up for the guys. I'm running the teams here, with the computer, whatever So it was that juxtaposition that you had to then, you were in the friction of it. And then I've been lucky enough to, you've also now, you're almost complete with my Dharmic revolution, this new version of the Sage Apprenticeship, where we're really in this year-long progress of linking the tantra, linking this alchemy and the sciences and the psychologies in with the seasonal flows. So we are completely held with nature. And so I've just been watching like you shedding the skin, of old Claire, and coming into this really beautiful butterfly.
Yeah,
So
it feels like it's not just old Claire. It
yeah.
feels like it's my whole lineage of women who
Uh,
have been striving for generations. They're holding the fort, and I know, I knew my mother's mother, who was the same. She did it for everyone else. She had, because the piece about self-care, I've known this intellectually for a long time, but this is really new to me. It's so interesting, and I see this along, my peer group in my life and my work colleagues. No one really knows how to take care of themselves, so this is new.
yeah.
And it's really sad, isn't it? I feel like, well, one of the things I've known for a long time, I was raised by a feminist, and have I certainly in more recent years have a real kind of desire, I guess, like it feels a little bit more fiery than that, to help and support and empower women, because I think we've just been trained out of femininity. It's like a, and self-care actually.
Mhm.
We'll put everyone before us, and I see this with all my friends and all my colleagues as well. Everyone's doing everything for everyone else, and don't really know. We've lost the art of taking care of ourselves. And I think through your programs, all the different ones, it's like knowing how to make yourself a really warming, nourishing tea, or being able to do a chanting mantra practice that just fills my heart, or the encouragement to just go outside and walk and look at the sky and be astounded by nature, or I don't know, having kind of like yeah, sort of real experiences um in the fields just down from my house, where I'm just like, oh, there's me in nature and this is just amazing. I feel on top of the world. That's really new. It's like a new piece of the world that I never knew existed, because I was like going to work, going to, eating food, going to bed. And that's how I've been taught to be. Override your needs. Just work hard. Keep your eye on the future, because the future is going to be amazing, but the future really never comes. So it's like me being able to kind of just drop into what is now. How does it feel just to look at the clouds passing by? Yeah, amazing.
It
So
brings me to, yeah, I love this. And I love, yeah, I love your excitement about it. And I've just seen such amazing ahas that you've had and just such deep growth. So the depth, but that expansiveness. And it
yeah,
brings me to this thought of, what we're really doing here is yoga therapy, like in the highest sense, like a tantra yoga therapy with dharmic living. And I think about Shinrin Yoku, this forest bathing, right? And how this is one of our most needed and most, I would say it's becoming very popularized therapy out there. And who would have ever thought in the past that just getting outside would be therapy? But
yeah,
who ever would have thought that aligning, like not knowing to eat seasonally, not knowing that there should be a time where you devote 2 times a year to some good, healthy cleansing. So you're preventing yourself from getting sick for the rest of the year, not knowing that it's best to align how you think, the activity level, what your energy level is, your output versus your reclamation and getting nourishment, like to align that to the year was always just natural. And we've come so far away in our modern living from our nature, from our true nature. And this is dharmic living. So dharmic living is one of our focuses here at the Wild Temple School. It's the main focus, where when we are in alignment with nature, when we are in alignment with the seasons, and when we start to ask that question of who am I, which is really the greatest question in life, you really start to tune in to your authenticity. And then you start to shed what is blocking you from really feeling joy, fulfillment, and right, really being able to be in reciprocity with the planet, with all relationships. And so I do feel that just our how I know when you came in before I had this aha download of this Dharmic revolution. And so I know you've said a couple of times I've taken all your programs, but now it's like you're taking the programs in this year-long flow that is incredibly integrative. It's cohesive in a way that it makes sense to to our nature body. It's nothing is really out of alignment. It's new, possibly just on the level of psychoeducation, right? Learning the science of polyvagal theory, right? We learn about that during the hibernative times of winter. So you actually have the time to rest and understand, ooh, I need to, amplify a little more of my healing and focus on my vagus nervous system, the vagal toning. And then each of the seasons then are carrying you into just a little different focus with different skills. But the methodology is truly this deep alignment that's putting you back into wholeness. So I see this as like true therapy. Would you think this is like,
I would say the same. And what struck me when you were describing it was, yes, and I didn't really try hard in the year. It's like the way that you set this up. it led me through. There was no nervous system stimulation, like, oh, I don't know if I've got this or whatever. It's just like, so the way that it's set up, it's really easy. And just like, there's today's lesson or this week's lesson. Oh, that's great. I can relax into that. What's coming next week's fine. I don't need to think about it. So it was really nourishing the way that I've experienced this last year.
Yeah. Oh, I love hearing that. Yeah. And as opposed to, I know some of the topics we've talked about are, say, for example, when you're learning a pranayama in a
Mm.
modern yoga studio or through a specific system, but you don't understand polyvagal theory, the effects of more advanced pranayama on the nervous system and how this can create anxiety. And we don't realize, we don't connect it when we're just going about our day and showing up for work and showing up to practice yoga or learn yoga, and people aren't trained in this. This is where having this training is so key, right? To really have as safety, but also to progress
Yeah,
and without the anxiety. Like we can have challenge is so healthy, right?
yeah,
Challenge to get you through the thicket, but it's not needing to throw you out your center, to burn up your ojas, to tap your system. It can be when we're held, we're pretty much being held in prana, we're being held in life force energy through the seasons. That's how I've orchestrated this. And so everything, including your education, is aligned with it. Yeah, will you speak a little bit to that? Because I know you've had experiences where maybe
yeah.
people aren't really, they're curious as to what am I talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I think talking about pranayamas, I have learned pranayamas in the past. And my experience was I didn't really like it because it was too, I just feel like it was maybe not in the right season, a little bit too strong, maybe at the wrong time. And as kind of what I would call a stress alongside it. Um, Whereas how I've been learning it with you is, I mean, you even to learn. I remember first learning the kind of deep belly breath that you teach. Yeah, I think that was in one of the first classes in the 200-hour yoga teacher training, and learning how to do crocodile breathing. I mean, that's saved me so many times. Like I just stress at work or something, I'll go and lie flat on my belly and breathe. Wow, who knew that that could be so simple just to bring all the stress down and dissipate it through the floor? So yeah, I've been thinking about it. But yeah, like learning pranayamas before, I always felt like it was like it's somehow an achievement. There's something to get to. Um, but the way you teach it is really all about watching what the breath is doing and where the breath is and integrating it into the navel. It has felt so again just like really supportive
Mm.
rather than yeah, I don't know, it felt more like a I don't know, like a somewhere like an achievement, as like, this is, if you can hold your breath for like 10 breaths, then hold it at the top. And yeah, I was completely stressed and really just shied away from doing it. And I think it's rather than this is Philoma pranayama, this is whatever, like learn this. That's not how you've been teaching it. You've been teaching it in the krama, again, in the sequence, where you feel like it's just the next step. It's the progression without trying, almost. Yeah, and very nurturing, very sort of empowering. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you brought it to, I didn't like it. And you actually said for some of the reasons why, maybe it was too strong, wrong season, but I know at the time you didn't know those thoughts, right? You didn't even know to think of that. You just realized I don't like this. It's not feeling good in my body. And I think these are the things that we name, right? This is the reason why so many people do not feel good after doing pranayama, and why it's written in the text that you actually need a guide. They say guru, but you need a guide. You need someone who's walked the path before to give you the reasons of why you don't hold your breath for a long time first thing, and reasons being there's science that backs this up. It's too much pressure on the heart. It's
Yeah.
too much pressure on the nervous system. When we're bringing in too much energy, and our nervous system maybe doesn't have the fatty myelin sheath around each of the nerve endings, because we're go, go, go. We're not sleeping enough. We're not digesting and assimilating our nutrients. We are malnourished on many levels just because of stress, that then we add in something that is stressing you, which you don't realize it is, because you think, well, how can just air stress us? But really it is. It's like the subtle power is a real thing. That's the science of tantra, is a science of power, and it's a science of studying this energy. And so when we want to learn these secret sciences and the more subtle realms, we actually want to be studying with someone who knows the language and knows that there are all these layers, and that when we learn them in proper order, there is this beautiful methodology that the body is like a flower. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's next. Oh, let me try that now. Oh, we got to pause. I need to integrate. It's just, there's a wisdom that when we are doing an occult science, that's what this is. Occult means hidden, it's eclipsed, right? When we're in an eclipsed practice that has been maintained for thousands upon thousands of years, what we're doing is we're tapping in this, like, I'm part of a lineage. This lineage is the people, the sages, the practitioners that have come before me have refined these practices in a way that it's really aligned with health, really aligned with mental stability, really aligned in supporting emotional intelligence. And so when we put all these weavings together, these puzzle pieces in a cohesive way, we can live our modern lives with these ancient practices in a way that the ancient practices are holding us in our modern life and helping to align us to our highest living, and our biggest joys. And I would love to add on to this, and go into a question here, Claire, where one of the things that I thought were just so lovely. You've had a number of stories, and one was when you began with a cleanse. So that's part of our program. Is we come in through the gate with some land and lineage healing. We work with our lines, and then we go into Navaratri, which is the 9 nights of the Divine Mother. It's offered every spring and fall in alignment. It's a ritual practice that is dedicated. It's an ode to the Divine Mother in her different forms every fall and every spring, and it follows the moon, the lunar calendar of Jyotish, or Vedic astrology. We align this with a cleanse, and we do this with one of my dear friends and colleagues, Michael Van Sciver, who's an Ayurvedic physician. And so in my practices of working with him now for, oh my goodness, many, many years, I've been doing this cleanse with him and this style of cleansing with Navaratri. It's how we open up our Dharmic living. It's how we step in now to this sage apprenticeship. And so you had a really interesting experience where you said this cleanse was life-changing. Can you talk a little bit about the hows and whys, if you remember? It's been a little.
Yeah. I'd done lots of different styles of cleanse leading into this. I had actually led some cleanses as well. So the Kitchery Ayurvedic inverted commas cleanse. Um, and it always felt like a bit kind of, you had to muscle through, it's really hardcore. I'm going to feel like death for a few days, and then maybe later I'll feel a bit brighter. Um, this cleanse, yeah, it changed me in lots of ways around nourishment. What is nourishment? Um, and I, for quite a number of years, have been making my own ghee, and there's lots of ghee, and it just feels like a massive hug from the closest person to you in the whole world. Yeah, it felt good on all the levels. Yeah, I didn't, I, yeah, it just really felt like, I think I shared with you at one point, I think there was this kind of chat going around um, the Ayurvedic communities, school, etc., that ghee was fattening, and you have to watch. Don't use too much because especially if you're kapha dosha, don't use too much. But actually, Michael encouraged us to use lots. Like I think was it something like 4 tablespoons of ghee per meal, something like that. Is that right? Two.
Two, two. Yeah.
But
Maybe
yeah,
it went up to four. I don't know.
maybe it did. Maybe it did. And yeah, I didn't eat masses more or less than normal, but I felt like I was fed so well. And we were eating veg, right? There wasn't, and he didn't encourage you not to, if you wanted some meat, you can have some meat and all of this, but effectively it was just really such a nice experience. I think everybody that did that most recent one in the springtime felt the same. It was just like, yeah, that's what I remember. Was there something else that I said to you at the time?
Yeah. Yeah, you did have something else, just a little bit different or a little bit to add on to that. But just for listeners, in case you don't know of ghee is clarified butter. So it's about 15 minutes of boiling about a pound of butter down, and you skim off the milk solid. So it's really good for lactose intolerance and deeply nourishing to your microvilli. It's like food, one of the main foods for your intestines. And this is where we assimilate nutrients, especially our B vitamins, right? And so when we are eating nutrient dense food, so that's the focus of these cleanses, from what is growing in the season, or if it's springtime, even eggs, because chickens are laying their eggs, right? So we are totally in alignment with the seasons, but also with the astronomical events that are going on with this dance of the sun and the moon and the earth. And it's these force fields that are pulling the toxins out of the body. So we're aligning with this in a way that the cleanse is not just physical, but it's psychological. There's like this, you create, there's so much space that's created. And I remember that was one of the key pieces that you talked about, Claire, where you felt that maybe all of the different things that you'd been learning up to then, right, with the Ayurveda and the this, and then this kind of crumbling of old self, this trying, being in the chrysalis to emerge into new self, and with the ancestral lineage, all of the things, right, that you said you felt a little cluttered. And by doing this cleanse at the beginning, it was like clearing this clutter. And all of a sudden, it was giving you room to really understand what nourishment meant, and even craving. And how, yeah, I remember like your cravings with food shifted, but also your craving with yoga shifted, which was from that more masculine or accomplishment, like how is this pose going to do? I got to do this pose, into feeling. And I remember this so much because I remember this was when you really started to understand about what I call the pleasure portal. When we have this, when we are clear enough that the mind can rest, then prana rises. And prana is the sun. When the moon is made steady, then the sun shall rise, is an ancient tantric proverb. And so when we are cleansing of the body and the mind in a way that the mind can settle, the prana rises, and then like life is more pleasurable. Your yoga practice is more pleasurable. Your kitchen alchemy is more pleasurable. And so that's the piece that I remember.
I do remember because I got to the point where I was completely confused by all the things that I'd heard in the, you know, I don't know, yoga type conversations about food and juice fasting all the things, everything sort of felt a little contradictory to each other. So this is good. No, it's this. No, that's bad. This is, to the point where I'm sharing with you that there was this conversation about ghee and whether it was really that good for you. And, it is butter after all. So, just take care. And so I think my head was a bit scrambled about, well, what is health? What is good food? What is bad food? Um, and I think that point was, well, wait a minute, this is all silly. All these conversations are really silly. It's like nourish yourself on the level of nothing is good or bad in a way, right? Um, and that it's like being choosing from this clear space of knowing you, hearing hearing your internal uh, voice that will be nourishing today. Yeah, and it's not that, oh, you need to eat this amount of protein and not have carbs and I don't know, whatever else. um it's like, well, for today, for me, what would be nourishing? And that's on a food level, but on all the other levels too.
Yeah.
Staring into the sky and just lying on the grass or something, even for like just 2 minutes, it feels so good to do.
Yeah, that was the pivot. And it was so cool because that was pretty much, we're now in this like cleansing time and emergence into spring. And and as I shared, we do a fall and a spring cleanse, right? So in the Dharmic revolution, and then your experience shifted into, well, maybe I'm not really going to do a lot of yoga this week. And you kind of stopped and you started to exercise and lift weights and going
Yeah,
for walks, and your walks became your medicine. And I find this so hilarious because I'm a yoga teacher trainer, but I'm also a yoga therapist. And I'm a big fan of yoga comes in all shapes, forms, and sizes. It's not just in asana. And if you want to let go of asana, do it. And if it's
yeah,
you're moving the body by taking walks in nature or going onto a lake and paddleboarding or lifting weights, and you're meditating and chanting or reading the ancient texts, that is yoga. That
yeah,
is totally yoga. So
yeah.
get pigeon.
And yeah, and what's not yoga is you have to do this no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've been learning is like, even now, my mind still says, oh, you really should be doing more.
Mm.
And every time I hear that, I'm like, maybe, but
Yeah.
what would I like to do? That's the training I've had to do. It's like, well, what feels good today?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
just,
and that's that flowering, right?
yeah,
So we have Mother Nature has her own divine timing. There's even a flower essence it's called impatience, and it's helping to be patient in allowing for the right times to flower and to reveal themselves. Yeah.
I think though that there is a lot of training happened. For me, there's a lot of like deep grooves of training in particular ways, whether it's through my corporate work life or through the Ashtanga practice. And how I felt so supported by certainly this year in the apprenticeship has been to, well, okay, maybe you can kind of question that a little bit. These deep grooves, what is, these are my deep grooves that I've been talking about, but whatever anyone's grooves are, we all have them, don't we? And some of them are not. They may have supported you at some point, but maybe now they need to shift a little. And I think this year with you has really helped me to, yeah, just take care and question a lot. what what's today, what this season, like, and because I'm also in the later season and second half of life where things are changing on that level as well, like things that, yeah, I didn't think about before, and now like, wow, look at that. Look at this, that my arms are changing. You know, it's all kind of weird stuff, but it's life, isn't it? It's cycles. Um, and I think I'm gaining kind of strength, I guess, in raising the questions. Is this okay, or does this need to move?
Yeah.
So there's lots of that going on.
Yeah. Yeah. In recognizing that, you want to live a fulfilled life and you've pushed for so long in what I know you've said before, very masculine environment. And so yeah, kind of looking at life in a different way and questioning how the past actions and grooves based on society. You've been conditioned. You were also, raised by other women who are also pushing, and yet the deeper query that when we're in alignment with prana and when we are practicing tantra, to really allow this authentic you to come forward and bringing in all of these woven tapestries of support. So you've worked with teas. I remember there was a whole season, I think all winter long, you were just studying the herbs that I sent you in this little kit. And so you're making the go-to cola tea, feeling how that felt for you, the juniper and how that felt for you. And so you're working on this physical body layer, but then also moving into emotions and habitual ways of thinking. And we do that through flower essences. So you were then, because we're working together, also able to work with specific essences that addressed your unique grooves to help you get out of that stuckness and to move through the tar or through those veils at a quicker pace so you can just
Yeah.
get to where you need to go. Will you speak a little bit about the uniqueness of the wild temple? Really is that there's such an herbal component and nature component with the yoga. It's a synergy. And I'd love for, yeah, people to hear from you. What does this mean? What does this feel like?
I, I think it's definitely unique in my experience to study herbs and flower essences, which I had not had. Well, yeah, interesting, Bach's rescue remedy I had used before, but I didn't really know that was a flower essence. So when I heard flower essences, I'm thinking, oh wow, this is a little bit like, I don't know, not very tangible or something. But my experience with them is just incredible. They're like little drops of sunshine somehow. And yeah, and to use herbs in a way that potentially our ancestors used them, and getting to know, I've gone through the the kind of, I was keen to use. So in Ayurveda school, you get to know the cumin, coriander, turmeric, things like that, fennel. But I wanted to know the herbs that were more used here or that we grow here. So, and even more in the sunnier climates in other parts of Europe and stuff. So the basil and rosemary and parsley and things like that. So it's been so nice, and to just be able to put those herbs into some hot water, steep them overnight, and drink them as a tea. It's like the easiest thing, but it's so interesting and powerful. I just love it. And the various tastes at different times of year. It feels kind of primal, and it feels quite to me it like connects you to your predecessors, your ancestors, and very feminine, I would say. Like really like connecting to the female lineage. And all my the female side of my family, they're all great cooks. So they're like, my mum's like, duh. I'm like, wow, I've just not, to me this is news. So, and to use them as kind of healing supports has been so nice. Fennel is an amazing,
Mm.
to me that was one of the ones I used in the beginning. Is fennel is an amazing plant to do all sorts of fun things, remove heat, like help with gastric upsets and all this. Yeah, to know that stuff, I think it's so powerful in this modern society. There's so much power in that.
Yeah.
Grow the
Yeah.
plant yourself. You can use the dried varieties. Yeah, there's a lot of uses. So I think the wild temple is just far and wide and deep and high and expansive and brings me into myself as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the herbs very therapeutic, and again, it's like I'm kind of stretching this word therapy so we can see it from the different angles, because when we think of yoga therapy, we think of it as back care.
Yeah.
I have sciatica, or people may just think it's just mind stuff if they're thinking psychotherapy. But yes, yoga absolutely is mind stuff. But when I want to just bring a couple more your stories forward, because they've just been so special, before we close up, Claire, if that's okay, just a little bit longer.
Sure.
Okay. Um, the therapeutic of feeling wonder and inspiration and awe, right? So we are largely thinking that yoga is it's tangible, it's physical. We're thinking structure, but what is experienced here in the Wild Temple is it's way more than that, right? There's this emotional level, there's a psychic experience, there's a dharmic experience. But when we are in the tantric alchemy of what's codified as moon, sun, and fire, the sun is representative of prana, of life force energy. And I remember you were listening to one of the lectures that I had recorded on prana, and you were taking a walk and you left me a message. You said, Brooke, I think I've just experienced true awe for the first time. Is this something you feel like you could elaborate on? I only have like kind of the detail. I don't have the details. I have just little memories of this.
I don't remember exactly what I said to you, but in that message, but I do remember there was there's a lovely farm cooperative opened just beside us, a big expanse. I think it's 100 acres or something. So, but yeah, small scale, but like lovely the way they're doing things. It's very much like bringing the land back to kind of yeah, more looking after the land and providing an area for birds and wildlife, and they're really cultivating that. But there's a pathway all the way through. There's various pathways, but I was walking this morning. It was kind of early summer, I think, maybe May or June, sometime like that. And it was really bright, sunny morning. And there was no one around, just me. And I wandered through, and I think you had been talking about buttercups. I don't know, you were like elaborating for us at one point.
I think this one was just making sure you take an inhale.
Yeah,
I
and
think that I could have been talking about buttercups.
well, so I remember going around this, and I've walked this circle a lot of times, but it was before work and there was no one around. Normally there's lots of dog walkers, there was no one that day. And there was me in this field, and they're cultivating all the grasses, and the grasses were just sprouting, and they're all different colors, and there was buttercups everywhere. And it was just like, wow, this place is amazing. There was birds, and there were, birds singing. And I just inhaled and just like had this sense of like something huge that was way bigger than all the nonsense that was going on in the world. It just felt like I don't know, a real breath of life somehow walking through. And I think I was crying as well. I think I came to tears.
Yeah,
So
you've had such a beautiful moment. You're just leaving me there. So Claire,
I,
I work one-on-one. I'm so lucky to be able to, we are on walkie-talkie basically, but we meet a couple times a month, and, and yeah. And so being in your pocket for experiences like this is just so special. You were revisiting this talk. You're like, I know about prana. I know about the prana vayus. I've studied this, but it's like how we're aligning it with the time of year now, how, and you know, and then you're learning these other key elements, right? That everything is starting to integrate. And so you just, from what we had learned with the yoga psychology and just breathing, that like importance of the inhale as much as the exhale, I think you'd been doing so much.
Yeah.
And then that inhale, and then the beauty around you. And then I remember my little walkie-talkie Claire phone calls from that experience then led into the beech tree started to communicate with you. And I haven't really worked, I mean, I have some stories about beech, but with a flower essence, but you were led to this whole other use of beech and this whole experience of this tree. Um,
Yeah, because we found out together that beach was about the critical, you know, like being overly critical. And I think that's what was going on with me at the time, was like letting all this stuff go and like being a bit harsh on myself, and the self-talk was a bit bad. And then the beach tree just sprung up, and I was like, eat me. So I made tea.
I didn't know you could eat the leaves and you were making the tea from the leaves. It was just, you know, and then this has continued. It led us into, um, we work a lot with the senses too, in the tantric version of what's called like tattva chikitsa. So we're healing through the senses. And in this way that creates more and more shakti and more aliveness and more attunement to dharma. And one of the things that you realized was just this, yeah, the power of the senses when you were in nature and with friends and you were walking the locks with your friends. And then but it brought you into, and I do want to talk a little bit about Dharma,
Mhm.
because, you know, that's a big piece of what we're doing here. And why I believe you were really wanting to work with me is to understand what's next, you know, inspired, not retired, like what's next. And I feel that it's still shaping as you're moving into this butterfly form, right? In this emergence from that chrysalis. You've done a few um, you've oriented in certain ways towards things that have really filled you with awe and inspiration. And that's part of what we learn with Dharma. It's not a one size fits all. It's not just path. It's not just work, but it's pleasure. It's support.
Yeah.
It's freedom, you know, as well as it can be path. So will you share a little bit about your experience with Dharma in this Dharmic revolution journey?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it's almost like I used to be a yoga teacher. I don't do it now. I went back to corporate full time. Um, and so for me at this point, it's definitely coming up that I used to run this program for women and supporting women and helping them, similar to you, like align their day really, and around the Ayurvedic dincharya. And it's interesting for me that it always comes back to that. It always comes back to helping women be better and stronger. And, I see it in the workplace a lot where women try to be like men and then they turn really toxic. It's horrible to see. And then but it's actually quite difficult in the corporate world to be a woman. I would love to say it's changing. I don't see it changing all that much. And so for me, it's like how to use what I've been learning over the years to empower, to help. Whenever I do anything, I remember buying it. I wanted to make a quilt last year, and I thought, I don't really want to buy it from a shop or an online shop or whatever. And then suddenly this thing appeared on Instagram. It was somebody who's um, got a non-profit in Honduras where the women are making the little hexagons and you can buy this kit, and I'm support. So that's what I want to do. I support these women. I buy this kit. It's way expensive, but I don't care because I know that that's helping women. So for me, I haven't exactly figured out how I'm going to do this in the world. But I hope I'm going to help you a little bit more with the programs coming up. but yeah, it's strong in me to use my use my understanding and all the learning I've done over the years to help women somehow. So yeah.
Yeah. I love this. And I know also on your walks, you were doing like cleaning up the land. There were trash after Christmas. You were just appalled at all the trash and the wrapping paper and everything that was everywhere. And
I
um
bought a little grabber and went out picking up litter. It's
which
like part of my cleanse, right? That's when it started, was the cleanse time. I just decided that the outdoors was killing me because it was just trash everywhere, litter everywhere. I was
yeah,
like, I can't stand this. When is somebody going to clean it up? And then I thought, oh, actually, that someone is me. I'm
yeah,
going to do this. So I did it for quite a while.
there it is. There it is. And then another I guess one last story piece was you part of your dharma was really wanting to feel like you'd come home, like you had a home. And I know like you had a really magical experience. I know you're not there, like I have a few apprentices working with me right now. And there is this exercise that we do in Tantra that's this visualization to manifest something. And so it's literally a formula. And so I offered this for you, Claire, when you were in search of really finding your dream home, which you were realizing it was really hard. You're in a place like many places where it's really hard to find housing, especially in, the amount that you can afford and all of the things, and you want to feel like you've landed in the right place. And so can you share just a little bit about this really magical
Yeah.
experience that I think wound up working within like less than a month or something crazy?
Yeah, it was. It was really, I think I did it for 12 days.
Mm.
And it was a little practice, the Sankalpa practice. And yeah, my husband and I had been looking for a new house for quite a while. And we were like getting a little bit jaded by the whole process. Everything was so expensive, and what was on offer really wasn't suitable. And I did this practice for 12 days. And within that, and then I stopped. There was a little while, there was a little gap, maybe a week or so. And then suddenly we had the chance to buy the house that I'm in now, which we had viewed before. We had seen it and we decided it was going to be way too expensive for us. And then by some magic, yeah, the Sankalpa practice, we secured it. And it was, yeah, it was just like, it is actually our dream house with dream garden and all the space. And we've only been here maybe 6 or 7 weeks, but yeah, it was just incredible. It's almost like one of those practices you do, you think, whatever, it might not happen, but why not? I'll try.
Yep.
And then just actually blows your mind when it comes true.
Yep.
so so I then decided to use that same practice to manifest a buyer for our previous house, and that worked as well. And I did the same thing for around about 12 days. I don't know why 12, but it's the number.
That's maybe your magic number.
um, yeah, so yeah, things like that. I think this is part of the magic as well. So I think you mentioned earlier that this is there is some structure, lots of structure to the programs that you offer, but there's also some magic in there, and I love it. It just like that, yeah. That part just makes you feel all gooey inside. That it's not just the way this world is, that you do certain things and certain things happen. Well, maybe, but maybe something better. And I think that's what I experienced with that practice. That it's kind of beyond my wildest dreams. My husband and I, since we've been here, every few days we're like, one or other of us say, we live here. How amazing it is, we live here.
That is so incredible. See, this is Dharma.
Yeah.
when we have our home, when we are home, we have the support that we need to then do the other things.
Yes.
Right? When we're not feeling settled and we're not feeling like we belong and we can grow in the way that we need to grow and expand, then all of our energy is going towards that. It's almost like kind of falling into the cracks. And
Yeah.
so, what we're doing here with this aligning to body, breath, Mother Nature, the lunar cycles and seasons, the solar cycles and seasons, we're cleansing, we're doing ancestral healing and land healing. We're learning yoga therapy. We're learning the power of Tantra, the alchemy of Tantra, and all of these in a cycle, right? So we continue in this spiral. And I just have to say, Claire, I'm so grateful again, just you showing up today, of course, but I would say just period, working with me and being so present with all of the exercises that we've done, all of the journeys that we've taken, all of the cycles and seasons that we've been on together, because you really show up. I know it was a little rocky in the beginning where you're just like, oh, I'm kind of unwinding from something here, but really for this, especially the year-long apprenticeship and being able to work with you one-on-one, like Claire never misses a beat. They're always there. You're in the portal, you're doing the work. I mean, you may have like a little lapse of time because you're moving household or whatever, but there's this showing up to actually do the work. And so what I find is you are an affirmation to this work working. And so that's why I love connecting with you, because I know that what I'm doing and what all of these practices promise are not futile. They
Mhm.
are true, and they're really showing up hard, like really showing up strong in beautiful, beautiful, strong ways. And so I've invited Claire, just for you listeners, to be a mentor for our next program, which starts this fall. And I'm thrilled that people get to actually be supported by Claire in this experience. And we were talking right before we hopped on the call that although I haven't really billed it as such, this is a yoga therapy program. This is a Tantra yoga therapy program. And so many people who come to me have already taken 200 hours and they're just wanting to do a 200-hour again, where what is probably shifting right now is this foundational piece that I have called 200-hour before is actually that next level, but it's the foundations for yoga therapy. And then when you bring in the Ayurveda, living Ayurveda, you bring in these focuses, which is Dharma, right? Where we're learning about the different aspects of Dharma, and we're spending the summertime actually mentoring you to step into what is it that you are good at, what is it that is a need in your community or in your workplace, whatever, and you are supported in stepping forward. And so one of the things that we're shifting into a little bit is what I've realized is as one of the space holders, myself and Mother Nature, I would say, in this program, is that she has designed me to also reorient slightly. So my dharma is to empower women. And so I've actually decided that I'm making this program more specific for empowering women and going into the therapeutics of healing our pelvic floor and understanding that when we age as women, the tissues atrophy and we have to keep our pelvic floor strong, and yoni steaming and honey dipping and pussy cookies and all these wonderful things that I'm bringing in to really help to support the female body on this path, because I'm really ready for more female or those who identify as feminine to rise forward as leaders and healthier space holders, because the female body houses the Shakti of creation. We have these amazing womb vessels that can do a lot. And when we are not healed, and when we don't understand our own power, and when we are blocked in that power, we're living adharmically, we're living half lives. And so part of my reorientation is to really step it up, to step up that female empowerment and to step up this program as not just another yoga teacher training, not just helping you step into your dharma, although it's all that, but it's also a tantra yoga therapy program that people can bring that into the field as a yoga teacher or as a yoga therapist. So feels really special to me. And yeah, curious, any thoughts or comments about that, Claire?
I had a little moment where I went back to the point at which I decided to join this particular program. I had kind of discounted myself because I wasn't teaching yoga. So I think um, I remember having a little voicemail chat with you. I was walking in the woods and I was saying to you, oh, I would love to do this, but I don't know if I qualify. And I think that, wow, I mean, there's nobody that is disqualified from this program. I don't think, I think it is the epitome of self-care, is what I've experienced. Um, and so for anyone who is thinking, oh, well, maybe I don't qualify, maybe I'm not right, I'm not teaching yoga, or I'm not doing, well, I haven't taught yoga in the last 3 years or 4 years. So that's not a disqualification, is it? It's like,
No. No,
yeah,
and you're pivoting into what's next. And
yeah,
so it's, although, yes, we need self-care, and especially when there's been a deficit of self-care. But I think one of the most important pieces for me is it doesn't end there. We're giving back. And whether it's giving back to people, that's one thing. But what I find with you, Claire, is maybe it's people, maybe it is women, empowering women in the field. Maybe it is being mentor for the Wild Temple students that come through, but also nature. I already see you giving back, so that is when I was asked, what is your big dream? What is your big vision? And this is what came through this Dharmic living, this Dharmic revolution. It was all to give back to nature. I am a devotee of nature, and the best medicine that I can do is to connect humans to her so that we remember who we are, so that we remember who she is. And then we have this beautiful relationship, and then all beings can thrive, all the hummingbirds and little birds and bunny rabbits and wolves, everyone. Yeah. And the
no,
waters and,
yeah,
being animist, healthy waters,
yes.
tamed fires in the fireplace, please, in the kitchen hearths, please, not burning down California and Australia. Right. So there's this method to the madness.
No, it feels really wonderful. It's like it's the program I've dreamt of being part of, and I've been seeking for many years this and you, really, because as I say, you're somebody who is speaking truth and saying what it is, and all on all the levels. That is, yeah, that is a service to the world. I think pointing out, when you say this, what's behind that is this and this and this. Ah, okay, that's why yoga teachers do whatever, and yeah. So I think the way you express and the way you speak about things is, it's very enlightening. That's
Mm.
enlightenment to me.
Thank you. And so do you feel that yoga teachers would benefit from this program?
Without a doubt. Yeah, because I mean, we spoke about this a little bit earlier as well, that yoga teachers are not, in the world generally, and there's definitely exceptions, but most people are not well rounded in their experience and their knowledge. And I think you've talked about the three sister sciences, and that's what you're teaching, is how to incorporate all three,
Mm.
so that there's a stability. Yeah, it's well rounded.
Mm.
So for sure, and all the people that are not yoga teachers as well.
That's what I was going to ask you. So people who love to garden and maybe people who have studied flower essences and like to meditate, maybe, would they be good in this program, do you think, Claire?
I would say for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, gardening is one of my loves as well. So, but what you've taught me is, like to appreciate what's in the garden as well. And it's not just a transaction, grow veg, take from the earth. What I've got from you being around you for these years is that it is important to give and nurture and take care and leave spaces for other things that are not just for me,
Yeah.
you know, to
Yeah.
nurture and I think one of the things I learned, it's not so prevalent here in the UK about most people, well, that's maybe not fair, but there's a lot less of appreciating the land that you live on. We've been here for hundreds and thousands of years, but I know I learned that from you to go, what is the land that you live on? I had to look this up. I have no idea. So yeah, but to appreciate the ancestry and to appreciate who the original people were of the land that I live on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much a connector between me and the land and me and nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so people, I'll just ask one more just to kind of get a flavor for this. People who are therapists, who are nurses, who are moms, um, do you think that maybe if they like yoga a little bit and they do like to cook, do you feel they would find benefit in a program like this, and maybe why?
Yeah, I think, as I say, that I have been a yoga teacher, but I think that idea of nourishment, I think mums it's a really difficult job,
Yeah.
to take care of the house and the babies and the kids. And usually the mum's left out or
Yeah.
at the back of the line.
Yeah.
Um, And I think yoga therapists or, other kinds of therapists as well to come into this and to appreciate that yoga, I think, in the West has been asana, and that's what people know. But I kind of knew right at the beginning when I did yoga that there was more to it, and I'm absolutely right. I just didn't know how to find it. So
Yeah.
so I think this program absolutely helps people find out what is the root of yoga. It's not just doing a triangle pose or a downward dog. That's really the very surface level.
Yeah.
So yeah, to appreciate some of that, I think anyone who's interested in looking after themselves a little more,
Yeah.
or a big bit more, would definitely benefit from this program too.
Beautiful. Okay, and then just the last one that I did, yeah, that just came to me because we haven't really talked about it that much, the tantric piece, Shakti
Mhm.
and power. Um, how how do you feel this can support the people who might be attracted to this? Like, who needs to understand power? Who needs to understand what tantra, like classical, authentic tantra is?
Yeah, I mean, where my mind goes initially is look outside the window to the world and you know how not to do power.
Yeah.
I think what I've learned through the study of Tantra is that the way you teach it, at least, is very grounded, it's very stable. And that's where you spend a lot of time making sure that people are that before there's an upward movement of prana and an outward, movement of prana. So yeah, I think God, this world needs it more than ever. I'd say that piece alone. um, but the other parts of Shakti are all the just lovely parts of learning about the goddesses and the mantras, and that is so heartwarming and I think soul nourishing. That's how I've experienced it. It's like to learn some mantras and to learn about the powers of the goddesses. Wow, that is yeah, that's the love part, I'd say. The nourishing in the kitchen for sure, and then the goddesses and the mantras. For
Oh,
me, that's just
that's it.
feels amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for taking your time again. And um, yeah, it's just again a joy to have you part of my life, part of our Wild Temple School. And so, for those of you listening, if you're interested in just staying along for the ride of the podcast episodes, or maybe getting, in a little closer into one of these programs, or even the Dharmic Revolution in our community, then you'll definitely be connecting with Claire, who was so gracious to come in as mentor. And yeah, I love to close just with, what are you reading right now? Well, and maybe with you, what are you crafting right now?
Um, what I'm reading at the moment is I've kind of fallen in love with the Greek tragedies, but I'm reading my empowerment of women is that I only read female authors nowadays in novels. And so yeah, they're written, these books that I've been reading are written from the female, Artemis and people like that who kind of get a side mention in a lot of the Greek myths. So it's all about the women characters. um, what am I crafting? At the moment, I am doing a little cross stitch of a Highland coo.
Ooh, I don't know what
So
that is.
a Highland cow. Do you know what a Highland cow looks like?
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
At the moment, it's like down regulation from work day, just like no brains. It's kind of painting by numbers kind of thing, but a kit. It's really nice. So yeah, it's good to do something that's only using half of my brain
Yeah.
after work.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wonderful. Well, that's really fun. All right, Claire. Well, again, thank you so much. And I
thank
look
you.
forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you.